Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa today launched the Good Green Deeds campaign in East London. The campaign seeks to change the attitude and behaviour of all South Africans towards a responsible waste management. The president also believes that going green can lead to new business opportunities and create thousands of jobs. Small Business Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu joins me now for this discussion. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight.
It's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for inviting me.
Now, good green deeds. One would say that it's about time we start taking this issue around environmental awareness seriously. And how are South Africans going to be receiving it in your perspective?
I think they're receiving it very positively, because today I was in Mamelodi and I went to a few areas, including a crèche, including a primary school, because as a Department of Small Business Development, we believe that if this has to take off, it has to start with young people. If you go to the schools and explain to the young people, and you go to the schools and put the different bins where different waste has to be put in there, you're already supporting the cooperatives who come to the school to go and collect that waste. So I was in Mamelodi, and I wish to thank the community for really receiving us. But also I'd like to thank the community for receiving the message very positively. When I was speaking to young people about what do they do with the little papers of sweets when they eat the sweets, simply they just throw it out there. The first thing and most important thing is about the president recognizing, firstly, the importance of South Africans cleaning their areas around them. Before you even get to the issue of environment and all, just the pride of having clean cities, clean villages, clean towns, clean homes. And some of us who were born way years back, we used to compete with families about how clean our areas were, how the garden was properly done, how the stoop was properly done.
But then what happened to us? I must ask you, Minister, what happened to us? Because I grew up in Mamelodi, right? Yeah. I grew up in Mamelodi, so I can tell you quite clearly that we used to clean the stoop, and then you'd go outside, and then you'd make sure that even if there was no grass, you'd make sure that the area in which and the parameters which you occupy are clean. But now we're finding that even young and old are throwing litter, and then you know what they're saying? This is job creation. If I can tell how many times I've heard a person throw litter and say, I'm creating somebody a job, or I'm helping the person who's going to be sweeping the streets to keep their job. What happened to us as a culture, as a society, when it comes to the way in which we preserve ourselves and also our communities?
It's about communities taking responsibilities for the surroundings around them. It's about citizens recognizing the fact that they've got one of the most beautiful country in the world, and therefore that country, in order for it to survive for the future, they need to take responsibility as citizens. It's also about people having a correct attitude because of the proper understanding of why they're doing it. I think in the past, many of us were forced, because the way we used to relate to our parents, relate to the community was very different. You would never walk around and not allow an adult to say something to you about picking up the paper. Today you say pick up the paper and they almost want to slap you, which is a problem. This is a societal problem. And the fact that the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has recognized it as a problem, it means we can begin to deal with it. Somewhere along the line, we lost it, and I think that we need to go back and check where did we lose it, because first and foremost, as family, we always used to take pride about the cleanliness around us. But today, somebody thinks somebody else needs to do it. It's also about democracy and taking democracy for what it is, and not what I call democracy. Democracy is about citizens taking responsibility around themselves, and this is one of it. President Cyril Ramaphosa visited Rwanda, and many of us have been seeing Rwanda, and we see where Rwanda was a few years ago, from 1994, from the genocide to this, and the fact that they took responsibility to say, as government, let us help our communities to understand, firstly, let's clean, but also let's look at the business side of it. And the business side of it is not about throwing and then saying. The business side of it is the cooperatives that I met today. They can't come there and find running water dirty. They can't come there find everything being thrown around. They can't find broken bottles. They need to find things packed properly. If it's bottle, is properly. If it's paper, it's proper.
You know, it's funny, you're not the first minister to refer to Rwanda, and I remember that the Minister of Finance, Lindiwe Zulu, also keeps referring to Rwanda. So clearly Rwanda has come up as a beacon of hope in terms of the African continent. But then I'm going to have to ask you and put you guys then at the table and say, hold on, we were the leading country on the African continent, and to some extent we still are. But now we had many African countries looking to us. Now we're finding ourselves looking outside. So where did we miss the mark? And how do we fix it? Because it has to be sustainable. This can't just be a campaign that launches for the next 2 years, 3 years, and then citizens forget about it.
No, this is not going to be a campaign just for today and a short period. This is a long-term campaign. Because if we can talk about Rwanda, they'll tell you how long it took them to get there. It's about citizens, because with Rwanda, it's about citizens. When the president says, we need this to be done, and they appreciate it, they jump with it, and they run with it. Instead of saying, who said it? What does it mean for me? What's in it for me? This is one of the most beautiful countries.
We've got sometimes a culture of maybe entitlement.
Absolutely. Well, of course, we can't run away from that fact that, and we need to deal with these issues, because sometimes we don't want to say it because we don't want to be misunderstood. Let's understand each other. We are South Africa. We're one of the best countries in the world. We are competing with the entire continent. We are competing with the world. Competition cannot be about how we only govern. Competition will also be about what citizens' responsibility is all about. And this campaign is one of the campaigns that's going to take us forever until we get it right. And we wish to thank the president, because quite frankly, he went somewhere, but quite frankly, he visited in the door-to-door. Because the door-to-door, when we go to the door-to-door and you see toilets and this, and you see people sitting there and saying, we're waiting for somebody. Yeah. We used to dig pit latrines, clean them, use J's fluid or something like that. Those used to be clean. My grandmother could not tolerate us going in there and not keeping it clean. Let's go back there. And I think the most important thing is the appreciation of our own country. We will clean our country if we appreciate the country.
So but it's also almost like going back to basics, Minister.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I cannot let you go without asking you this. And obviously, because you're wearing different hats. So you've got the Good Green campaign, but at the same time, you're still the Minister of Small Business Development. So I must ask you this from a perspective of, I mean, you would have seen, I mean, obviously you know about NERSA deciding to increase the tariffs on behalf of Eskom. And now I must ask you in terms of how then do you start mitigating it, especially on behalf of small businesses? Because you know that small businesses are suffering already as it is. But now with this tariff increase, which then directly impacts on the bills that they're going to be getting at the end of the month, month to month, what does that say about hampering small business? And what does that say about choking the very small businesses you are trying to elevate in this country? Yeah,
absolutely. I cannot deny that. I cannot deny the fact that any extra money that goes into small businesses really strangles them. However, we must also appreciate that we're all in one country. Even small businesses themselves, they are all in one country. Our responsibility as government, and especially at the Department of Small Business Development, is to continuously engage and see how can we reduce that strangling, how can we reduce the red tape, how can we reduce and make sure that it becomes easy for business to make easy. But we can't isolate ourselves as the Department of Small Business Development from the overall challenges that are there. We are engaging.
Surely you can go to NERSA and say, guys, but I'm championing this portfolio of trying to raise small businesses. You know, small businesses account for a significant portion of people that are employed in this country, right? People go to small businesses and go to them and say, guys, we're trying to create employment opportunities, but if we're shutting down the very same institutions that are going to create employment, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Absolutely. Look, I go everywhere where I can. I speak everywhere where I can. We are the voice of reason for small and medium enterprises, whether it's in cabinet, whether it's any other meeting, including this one, is of concern to us. I mean, anything that happens in increase, whether it's petrol, whether it's tax, whether it's whatever, we know, we feel it as a Department of Small Business Development, because we can't be putting financial resources and non-financial resources supporting SMMEs so that they can then grow and keep the jobs, and then somebody else comes back and makes it very difficult for them. But all I want to say is that we will do the best. We continue to argue for the importance of small and medium enterprises. We continue to argue in government, in the private sector. Let us reduce the burden on small and medium enterprises.
Minister, thanks for joining us this evening on Newsnight.